Just imagine you're a world leader, you're sitting for an interview, and someone says that to you. It's a pretty wild statement, right? But believe me, the response is even crazier.
He corrects them. I wasn't abducted, he says. I was invited. And that one little word, well, it changes absolutely everything.
Okay, so let's get into this. We're going to break down the absolutely incredible story of Kirsan Ilyumzhinov, a seriously high-ranking politician who says that while he was in office, he was taken aboard an alien spacecraft.
Now, this isn't just anybody making these kinds of claims. To really get the weight of his story, you first have to understand who this guy is.
Kirsan Ilyumzhinov was a major player on the world stage. We're talking President of Kalmykia, a Russian senator, head of the World Chess Federation. This guy moved in the absolute highest circles of power. He wasn't some fringe character. He was in the room with presidents, with prime ministers, the whole shebang. And this is the man who says he was invited onto a starship.
So what exactly does he claim happened on that bizarre night back in September 1997? Let's walk through the timeline of events.
Okay, so it's about 10 o'clock at night. He says a translucent tube just appears off his balcony. He steps into it and suddenly finds himself on a ship that he says was the size of several football fields. But the story gets even stranger the next morning. His staff shows up to take him to the airport, but he's gone. His stuff is all there. The door is locked from the inside, but he's completely vanished. After a solid hour of panic, he just reappears. Casually walks out of a room they had already searched.
And this isn't just his side of the story. For the first time ever on record, his chief of staff, Vasily, confirms it all. He talks about the team's frantic search, checking rooms over and over again, only for Ilyumzhinov to just stroll out of a bedroom they had just scanned. When they asked him where in the world he'd been, he just laughed and said, "Oh, aliens took me."
But according to Ilyumzhinov, this wasn't just some sightseeing trip. He says the beings he met, who, by the way, communicated with him telepathically, had a very direct and, frankly, very critical message for all of us here on Earth.
So he asked them the obvious question, right? Why not just show yourselves? Why not appear on TV and just end the debate? And their response was pretty humbling. They basically said, humanity hasn't even reached a level of civilizational development where that kind of direct communication is even possible. And their specific critique of us was scathing. They apparently pointed out our constant wars, the way we pollute our own planet, and how we focus our greatest scientific minds on finding better ways to kill each other. In their eyes, we're still at this embryonic stage, and our biggest achievement so far is that we've figured out how to cook our food. Ouch.
But this is where Ilyumzhinov's story goes even deeper, because he claims that he is not the only world leader who knows that we are not alone.
Get this, he describes being in a sauna with former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger and the former Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. Kissinger, who is known for being a man of a very few words, starts asking Ilyumzhinov all these cryptic questions about his experience.
Ilyumzhinov says Gorbachev then nudges Kissinger, basically implying that the American statesman knew way more than he was letting on. But Kissinger, he just smiled and changed the subject. That whole encounter left Ilyumzhinov completely convinced that this knowledge exists at the absolute highest levels of power.
But then, Gorbachev told him an even more explosive story, one that supposedly happened at the absolute peak of the Cold War, between the leaders of the world's two superpowers. So, in a private meeting between the U.S. president, who was probably Nixon, and the Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev, the American president reportedly opens up this small folder and shows what's inside to his rival. Only a few top officials were even in the room.
And the alleged impact of what was in that folder, it was profound. According to the story that was told to Ilyumzhinov, whatever was in there caused both the United States and the Soviet Union to just abruptly stop their lunar programs. The space race to the moon, the defining competition of that whole era, just ended.
So all of this brings up a huge question. Why? Why would a man with a global reputation, with immense political power, and with connections to the most powerful people on the planet risk it all to tell a story like this?
You know, he doesn't think he's special. He sees himself as part of some larger evolutionary plan. He feels like it's his duty to speak out, to help create what he calls a critical mass of people who understand that we're not alone, forcing us, as a species, to evolve our collective consciousness and maybe start taking better care of our planet.
Ultimately, whether you believe him or not, Kirsan Ilyumzhinov's story really forces you to ask some big questions. It pushes right up against the boundaries of what we're told is possible. And it makes you wonder, what other secrets might be kept in those quiet meetings between the most powerful people on Earth?